Welcome to Lesson 3 of Image Bible Study, Gospel of John. You know, relationships that we have sometimes start with the help of a friend or a relative. Have you ever been fixed up with someone? Through one of my college friends, I met a young man who had the craziest sense of humor. He was what they call likable and relatable. And he usually kept everyone laughing. I mean, he kept us in stitches or at the very least smiling. Well, I arranged an introduction between him and my roommate. My roommate was still grieving over the loss of her father, but Dave managed to get a smile from her and even some laughter. They have been married for 39 years now. The earliest disciples of Jesus began to follow him at the recommendation of John the Baptist. Andrew and one other of John's followers decided to learn more. Andrew then tells his brother Simon that he has found the Messiah. When Jesus sees Simon, he gives him a new name. Cephas is an Aramaic name and it translates as Peter or Petros in Greek. Cephas and Peter are names that mean rock. We know that God had changed people's names in the past. Abram became Abraham, Sarai became Sarah, Jacob became Israel. When Jesus changed Simon's name to Peter, he was also changing his identity. And that idea is elaborated upon if we read in Matthew 16:13 through 19. Listen. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Now, Caesarea Philippi stood about 25 miles from the religious communities of Galilee, but the city's religious practices were different from those of the nearby Jewish towns. In Old Testament times, the northeastern area of Israel became a center for Baal worship. In the nearby city of Dan, Israelite King Jeroboam built the high place that angered God and eventually led the Israelites to worship false gods. Eventually, worship of the Baals or pagan gods was replaced with worship of Greek fertility gods. Caesarea Philippi stood in a lush area near the foot of Mount Hermon, and it became the religious center for worship of the Greek god Pan. The Greeks named the city Panias in his honor. Years later, when Romans conquered the territory, Herod Philip rebuilt the city and named it after himself. But Caesarea Philippi continued to focus on worship of Greek gods. And in the cliff that stood above the city, local people built shrines and temples to Pan. I saw these shrines on my trips to Israel, and they're also on your homework sheet. There's a color picture that was taken there. I took that picture. Um, and it's terrifying and amazing to stand at that site and remember Jesus' words, because this truly was the gate to hell. And even the gates of hell could not conquer what Jesus was about to bring about. Jesus and his disciples are in this pagan setting when Jesus addresses Peter. To the pagan mind, the cave at Caesarea Philippi created a gate to the underworld, where the fertility gods lived during the winter. And they committed detestable acts here to worship these false gods. Caesarea Philippi's location was especially unique because it stood at the base of a cliff where spring water flowed. The pagans of Jesus' day commonly believed that their fertility gods lived in the underworld during the winter and returned to earth each spring. and they saw water as a symbol of the underworld and thought that their gods traveled to and from that world through these caves. To the pagan mind, then, the cave and spring water at Caesarea Philippi created a gate to the underworld, and they believed that their city was literally at the gates of the underworld and what we now call the gates of hell. In order to entice the return of their god Pan each year, the people of Caesarea Philippi engaged in atrocities with each other and to each other. So when Jesus brought his disciples to the area, they must have been shocked. Devout Jews would have avoided any contact or association with the despicable acts committed there. But Jesus is telling Peter that his church will be so strong that even the gates of hell can't conquer it. Now, as you talk through or listen or consider your homework questions this week, remember that everything we're doing to develop ourselves in the faith is going to be a partner contribution to conquering the gates of hell. That's an awesome task, but we will be equipped for it if we're willing to be equipped for it. Blessings on your lesson.